Welcome, one and all, to Tune In Radio U podcast. I am here with the wonderful Shannon Gill. She is an evolutionary and archetypal astrologer and life coach. She is the coordinating director at Lotus Bend Sanctuary, the co-founder and owner at the Shift Foundation. She's also the president at the ASA-Astrological Society of Austin, the founder of Rhythm Sanctuary and ATX Ecstatic Dance. I imagine that ATX stands for Austin, Texas. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And she lives in Austin, Texas. Welcome, Shannon. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome.
And hello to all of your friends, family, community on the other side of the world there.
Yes, we are indeed on the opposite ends of the earth. And if for people listening or even watching, you might hear some meowing. Shannon, do you want to introduce Tiger?
Yeah, so this is my new baby, Tiger. We call her Princess Tiger. And I was trying to keep her on the other side of the house to be really present with you all today, and we could still hear her meowing. So we're just going to invite her to be present. And she's just a little over a month old. So she loves to be on my computer.
Feisty. Yeah, no, all good.
Yes.
She's very welcome. She'll bring an excellent energy to this podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, I'm just gonna base it right down, for layman people like this guy. What is astrology exactly? How would you explain it to, say, like a materialist? And is there any science behind it or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Good place to start. So astrology is the study of the movement of the cosmos. And yes, it is absolutely scientifically based. Astrology and astronomy were actually originally one unit. And, astrology was basically known to be channeled from the gods as a map for us to understand life itself, consciousness. And it's based on cycles. And this is why it's such a profound practice, because we have this map that we can look back in time and read the patterns. And so it does have so much to do with mathematics and sacred geometry, because basically everything is creating patterns, whether in the cosmos and then down here on the earth. So there's a correlation. It's not that astrology is predictive. I know there are astrologers that practice predictive astrology, and you certainly can, make and times for example, in December, I was interviewed on Tiana's podcast, and I predicted no food on the shelves in 2020. It just kind of flew out of my mouth based on the fact that every time this certain alignment of outer planets have come together, there's either been a pandemic or a world war. And that's where we are this year in 2020. Astrologers have been talking about this year since the 70s. So, each planet is an energetic reflection of us on a soul level. So every planet has a very specific energy that is vibrating, and as above, so below, also orchestrating our lives. So it's not like the planets are doing something to us. We're actually in this dance together.
Awesome. Okay, so when did you first start to kind of look to the, out there, the stars and the planets for I guess answers?
It's a good question, because once I did begin to constellate my awareness above, everything fell into place in my life. But I was a dabbler growing up. I had my spiritual awakening in my early 20s and was very much knew that I was to be on a healing path, to be in service to to others' transformation. And I was a dabbler, but I actually didn't have my first full official reading until I was 30.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, which is kind of crazy. And that day changed my life forever, because I have a certain pattern in my chart, we'll just call, that has manifested in a lot of intensity in my life. And I remembered that sometimes when people would look at my chart when I was still sort of a novice and they would look at my 8th house that has 5 planets in it, and they'd be like, oh, and it was this feeling of like doom or concern or wow, I feel sorry for you kind of experience. And so it put fear into me. So whenever I had my first reading with Dr. Charles Bibeau, who is the founder of the Archetypal Academy in Boulder, who spent his life and got his doctorate in the research of the history of astrology, he reconceptualized and rearticulated that specific constellation of emphasis of planets in my chart, that it was so empowering and really like a transmission of my gifts, that there was a direct connection between this intensity. And when I say intensity, a lot of my life is oriented towards transformation. So there's been a lot of death, a lot of, just trauma, certain things that go with the Scorpio or the 8th house archetype. But there was a direct correlation between my relationship to the darker aspects of life and my capacity to attain the highest levels of light. Okay. And so it was, it's what I came to learn was that that was my power. That was my power place, which was, so much about where we are on the planet right now. We're all going through a collective dark night of the soul. I went through many of those as a young person. My understanding now is to be initiated into knowing that deeper terrain, that underworld journey, to be able to hold light for other people.
Mm. So what is exactly, this is probably the first year, the first time in my life this year that I've heard the term the dark night of the soul so often, for obvious reasons.
Right.
And can you just explain a little bit what that is to people?
Absolutely. So there's levels of consciousness. And my belief and understanding is that we are divinity incarnate, and that we have come here in this sort of human experience as God Goddess consciousness, with a journey ahead of us to remembering the truth of who we are, right? You often hear, we're not humans having a spiritual experience, we're spirits having a human experience, right? So it's like we come in, we drop into human body, and we're asleep. We're in amnesia. And although some children come in and they're awake, and it's so amazing because they're still connected to the divine, and they're profound in channeling and all of that. But society conditioning slowly starts to sort of numb out and distract us from this essence that we are. And so the journey begins, right? And it's very important that we build a strong ego and that we learn to facilitate ourselves in life. But the system and the world that we have created and where we are currently definitely isn't spirit enhancing or soulful. It's, as we know, it's been quite materialistic. And so part of the journey of awakening is embracing what you refer to as the dark night of the soul, or sometimes we might call it a descent, a descent into the underworld. I'm also an archetypal astrologer, so I practice evolutionary and archetypal astrology. And you may know Joseph Campbell, the whole hero's journey. Well, what that is this descent or journey into the deeper parts of ourselves, which is the soul realm. It is also the realm where some of our deepest pain lies, or our what is known as the shadow, right? Mm-hmm. The shadow, the parts of ourselves that we cannot see, or the parts of ourselves that we wish not to see. And it's actually, and this is one of the golden keys to awakening, it's actually in the embracing, in that journey down into the pain, that liberates. And so I often, with my clients, I just simplify it. We are no different than nature. Here we are in Austin, about to descend into winter, right? The leaves dry, they wither, they fall. The compost happens. So the composting in the winter is that underworld journey, right? The magic. Or like the chrysalis of a butterfly, the caterpillar, like, it completely dissolves, right? It's so intense. We do this on a soul level. And what happens in the spring? Life returns, more glorious than ever. So we are constantly, as souls, going through descent processes, right? And it's painful, but it's liberating. And it's actually like, I also have a degree in Buddhism. They say that there is a term called the pain of pain. It's more painful to resist than actually going through the pain itself. Yes, the obstruction, because what we're doing is we are obstructing the light by dissociating from parts of ourselves, or by judging ourselves. We're actually just, and I think of us this way often, just as like conductors of light. We're here to transceive. We're here to receive and to transmit. So if there's a block, then we're sort of we're not shining our greatest. We're in a place of closure and distortion. We keep ourselves stuck, and we're actually resisting and preventing our own birthright, which is to be fully full of joy and happiness and purpose, which comes from this deeper descent into the underbelly of our existence.
Yep, that's it. You hit the nail on the head. That's an excellent explanation. So can you go into what being an evolutionary and / archetypal astrologer means? What does that mean? What do you do?
So I started out my journey at the Archetypal Academy. And what I learned through that journey, and as I mentioned, my very first reading, is that it is really helpful to see ourselves in a larger context. One of the gifts of astrology is that it depersonalizes things. So if we're like, oh man, here I am back in this same pattern again, there's this really sort of self-centered focus about what's wrong with me, right? As opposed to a more of an expansive, conscious approach or understanding of, we are actually all in this energetic dance together, and there's patterns of energy that make up the universe. And so in astrology, as an archetypal astrologer, there's 12 ruling archetypes, and they're constructs, they're patterns of energy that live through us on a soul level. So just to use myself as an example, I have this strong emphasis in my 8th house, the Scorpio. That's the archetype of the dark mother, right? So this is the Kali energy, or Ereshkigal, the goddess of the underworld, the most powerful feminine force on the planet. That was so great to hear from my teacher, who, by the way, I should say, the man who gave me my first reading then went on to be my teacher for many years, because it helped me to understand that I am tapped into this particular constellation of energy that lives through me. And the more that I can find alignment with that, the more that I'm going to be finding union with my purpose. And so I work with people to know, what are your ruling archetypes? We're a symphony of energies. Every planet was somewhere when you were born, and it has meaning. But then there's the dominant energies. So the placement of your sun, your moon, and the ascendant, or what's also called the rising sign, which is the sign that was on the horizon at the moment of your birth, between the heavens and the earth. Right. Those three, we call the Trinity, are your first 3 ruling archetypes. And so whatever sign those were in, so you're a Capricorn sun, right? So that means that your light, right? The sun represents our masculine. Your gift to life, literally, the sun shining through you, is to be an elder leader. So then you unpack that. Well, what is that? Oh, it's an earth sign. Okay, what does that mean? And then we go into more specifics about what is this archetype up to. And then you find out it's like in psychology, it would be the subpersonalities of your psyche, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that different. So we have these energies that are expressing themselves through us, so we can find union with them, which gives us more ease and empowerment. They are also all very different. They all have their own agenda. They all have a very specific purpose and a spectrum of light and shadow. And so they have to learn to get along and to work together.
Sure.
And so I consider your archetypal blueprint your hero's journey in a lot of ways. I always tell my clients it's like a stained glass window, okay? And the light of your soul is shining through it. The light of your soul is unchanging, but the spectrum of color is your archetypal blueprint in this lifetime, okay? Because in this lifetime, you've chosen to come in a female body, to be born as a Capricorn. And so that's the way your soul's expressing itself in this life. However, our soul is eternal, and that's where I would transition into the evolutionary dimension of the chart, which is looking through that lens of like, okay, well, what is my soul up to for the long run, you know? And that changes. The archetypes will change life to life, but the deeper soul work, the karma, you know, the karma and the contract is actually something that lives with you and journeys with you through this multiple lifetimes. So that's where I would go into, and that's what's so powerful about evolutionary astrology, is we can see where you've come in from in your past lives. What were your predominant archetypes, and where we've stuck, and what's the North Star for you? What's the golden key to unlock that evolution? It's very specific in a lot of ways. So it's incredibly empowering to understand your birth chart from this perspective, because we have this map, and we, you know, we've left ourselves these keys and these clues to help assist us on our journey.
Do you think people can get stuck in their like looking at their chart, for example, or their birth sign, and go, these are the traits, this is who I am, that's it, like, and they kind of just focus on that, and there's no, do you think there's movement allowed in that? Like, what's
That's a great question. Yes, fantastic question. Ultimately, we're called to evolve beyond our chart. And there's progressions throughout your life in your chart. You have your blueprint, which is status, you know, stays the same, right? Stagnant. And then there's progressions that happen, and then there's transits that happen, which is what's happening in the sky today in mathematical alignment to where it was when you were born, which creates a new alchemy. So it's always changing. And absolutely, people can get stuck in a certain construct. And just like we can get stuck, you know, at a job, or we can get stuck in a relationship. But also, as I mentioned, the archetypes, they have a spectrum of expression. They have a spectrum of light and shadow. I certainly see a lot of people stuck in the shadow of their chart. And but if you're really expressing yourself in the highest potential of that specific energy, then you're giving your gifts in a lot of ways, you know.
Yeah. This year has been quite a ride. I'd like to know your take on what has happened so far this year. I know that you refer to it as a collective dark night of the soul. What does that mean specifically from your perspective? And also, where do you see the rest? How do you see the rest of the year going?
The big question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whoosh. So I like to answer this question by looking back historically a little bit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, that's what's so valuable about astrology, is that it can help put the now into context. So there's cycles within cycles within cycles, right? You know, and so we're going to span back our awareness in time. We have what is known as the astrological ages. Okay. So the ages are 2,000 plus years long, right?
You're talking about
so,
like age of Aquarius, that kind of stuff,
yes,
right? Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So what my understanding of this moment in time is that we're at the cusp between the Pisces and the Aquarian age, okay? So we are coming out of what some people refer to as the dark age, the age of Aquarius. And we are ascending, you hear that word a lot, ascension, ascending into the age of light, which is the age of Aquarius. So there's a lot we could talk about as far as these ages, but basically to understand, they basically depict the cultural paradigm of this epoch of time, right? Mm-hmm. And so for simplicity's sake and for our understanding of 2020, I'll just say that the predominant understanding or cultural paradigm and consciousness of the Pisces age that we are leaving, ascending out of, was the split between spirit and matter. Okay, so if you know the glyph of Pisces, it's the two fish swimming in opposite directions, right? Well, that was a great way for us to be controlled, for man to think that we're separate than God and to place an institution in between us, whether it be religion or government or both, right? And so the shadow of Pisces is the age of deception, and there was a strong emphasis on religion, but it was the mantra would have been like, I believe in something greater than me, outside of me. And I have to go through this, institution to be deemed worthy, right? And now with this massive awakening going on, which is this Aquarian energy coming online, there is a reunification of the fish. And so, this whole Pisces age was about duality, right? And so the Aquarian paradigm that we are emerging into, and that's very much alive on the planet right now, is direct connection to source, is the awareness and the embodiment, more importantly, not just the mind knowing, but the embodiment, the true embodiment of the I am consciousness. We're returning to the Purusha, which is the one mind, which is the, again, reunification of duality. So it's the return of the divine androgyne, the union of masculine, feminine, the union of light and dark. This is an alchemical process that's going on within our vibratory system, within our chakra line. And so, if there's a mantra, it is I know because I am, as opposed to I believe that there's something. So, the age of Aquarius is about this reunification of us as one family, one consciousness. And it's a 2,000-year-long journey, right? And we're just at the cusp. And we're coming out of the dark age, where we were basically, we have built this very patriarchal, capitalistic world. And we are astrologically at sort of the apex of the crumbling of this distortion. If we think about coming out of the dark and it's musty, it's moldy, it's nasty. But again, I keep referring to a very natural process, just like we spoke to a minute ago about the seasons. We're in the death part. We cannot reconstruct our world until we destruct what has been out of alignment. So this is a global awakening happening, and there's layers to it, right? If we think of, again, if we can feel into ourselves as an energetic web, then it makes sense that, like, we've got a virus, and we've got, protests, and we have corruption, and we have this, because everything that has been distorted is being revealed. The light has gotten so bright that it is illuminating the darkness. So, I don't know how much specific astrology you want me to point to, but I will say that one important aspect about what is basically sort of the refined synergy of planetary alignment that's reflecting what's happening globally are the outer planets of Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, okay, all together in the sky in Capricorn. So this is a very rare occurrence because Pluto takes 248 years to go around the zodiac. Saturn takes 28 and Jupiter takes 12. So for them to all three come together, we know it's massive. And that's why astrologers have been predicting about this year, because in history, it's either been a pandemic or a world war anytime this happened. They're all together in Capricorn. Capricorn is the elder leader. It's actually also the ruler of our foundation, our structures of our world, so our government. However, what most people don't understand is that it's actually a feminine sign. And because through history, the patriarchy subsumed the feminine wisdom leadership, we have been completely out of alignment with the wounded, or I would like to say more the asleep masculine energy, running rampant and destructing and destroying. So this demolition happening, right? Pluto is this ruler of Scorpio, is about that descent process. It's about the shadow. It's revealing all of the corruption, but it's beckoning alchemy, right? That scorpionic process is about turning lead to gold. It's that descent and then the phoenix rising. Saturn is authority. It's karma. It's, it's about universal law. It's our leadership. So all the corruption is being exposed. And Jupiter, the largest planet, brings the light, brings the higher consciousness, brings the expansion of the mind and our understanding of something greater to help us create a new level of awareness and truth. They're all together doing this massive deconstruction in Capricorn of our system, so that when they walk into Aquarius, because that's the next sign, then we actually have a fresh slate to build upon.
Right. So when is that happening?
Right. So December 21st is a very important day to mark. And actually, I recommend people do ceremony and do like high vibrational events, because Saturn and Jupiter will enter Aquarius. So enter 0 degrees Aquarius, which is my rising sign. And it's actually 0 degrees Aquarius. So I'm definitely a midwife of this new age. And Pluto, of course, since it's the slower moving planet, doesn't enter Aquarius till 2023 and 24. So, people ask me, well, when is this going to be over? When are we going back to, back to the way it was? And I say, we're not.
Yeah.
And actually for the rest of our lives and beyond, we will be in this alchemical process. We're farmers. We're planting seeds for the future generations, because we have to remember this is a 2,000-year new epic of time that we are the pioneers of.
Yeah. Big job. So what does it mean for a Capricorn then, in this, these two planets in Capricorn?
Yeah, good question. It means exactly what you're doing right now. You're leading the way. You are redefining leadership. It's the resurrection of the divine feminine essence on the planet that is going to recalibrate. And I don't mean gender. I'm talking about the energy that lives in all of humankind.
Sure. Yeah.
The reconnection, right, to the heart. And you are, as a Capricorn, here to ascend to the top of the mountain. It's the mountain goat. It's one step at a time. You're helping to create this new foundation, this new platform, to put these roots deep into the earth, to create something of lasting value that will stand the test of time. That is that union of the feminine wisdom and the masculine drive. And so it's interesting. Capricorn is the 10th sign, and it's the top of the chart. It's also the area that's known as your career and all of that. It's known as the gate of God. And it's because there's an evolution that the soul goes through the signs, okay? So starting at Aries with, the rebirth of the cycle, right? Aries is actually, spring equinox, the true beginning. It's not January first, right? That's Gregorian patriarchal stuff. We are reborn in the spring. I mean, it's very logical, right? And then from there, from Aries, you know, the soul goes through a journey through all the signs. And I don't know if we have time, and I can do that if you want. But when we hit the 10th sign, we've gone through finding out who we are, what are our values, how do we connect, we open our mind, we create our security system, what is our gift, Leo, you know, how do we shine? Then we realize it's not about us, and then we become priestesses of the planet, Virgo. Then we realize the soul realizes I can only go so far alone, and we ascend into the upper hemisphere and we get into relationship dynamics, Libra, the sacred mirror, that brings up the shadow. We go into Scorpio, doing the shadow work and the healing, and then we have a level of enlightenment, and we realize that this is the alchemical journey of evolution, is that process of regeneration, like the snake. It's death and rebirth, constantly shedding skins. And then you arrive at the gate of God at Capricorn, and God grants man spirit to bring into form. And that's where we build our world, we build our society, we build our schools, we build our culture from the essence of the divine into form. Because that's not what's been going on. We've been doing it with very, the collective has been out of balance, as we know, right? With the masculine drive for success and ambition and material, acquisition. That's not exactly the best use of this energy, obviously. And so that's why we're so destabilized. So now we're saying, well, how can we recalibrate? We can build a society that's sustainable. We can build conscious schools. We can actually teach the real science to our children. You know, we're archaic. And all of that control has been indoctrinated into every system on our planet. And that's why the entire underpinning of our world has to go through a demolition right now. And just to kind of complete, since I sort of went around the zodiac, from Capricorn, we go into Aquarius, the 11th sign, which is waking up to that awareness that we are all one human family and working together, like ants or like bees. And we just sort of do this dance. And then the final, destination is into Pisces, which is actually the dissolution of the separate self back into oneness with source. So that's just a little taste of evolutionary understanding through the zodiac, if that's helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So what would you recommend to, it's literally the year of so much awakening. Like there is the people that are waking up to what's actually been happening for a very long time. It's a mass awakening, right? At the moment. What would be your recommendation to people that are just kind of starting to open their eyes and realize that, things have not been what they seem for a very long time? What would you say to these people? What's your, I guess, what would you recommend to these people to maybe start doing to look after themselves a little bit better, to get a little bit more education on, where to go for education, real education, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, great question. The first thing I would say is trust the process. Trust the process. This is not something that's happening to us. It's happening for us. So that understanding of alchemy is really important. The understanding of the process of descent and ascent that we're constantly cycling, like waves. To get support around that, to every person to do their piece of the puzzle of their shadow work. So whether that is counseling or, shamanic healing, whatever that person needs. There's so many modalities on the planet right now. It's fantastic, right? Past life regression. I mean, we have access to this higher dimension. I mean, that's the other thing that, we're going through this dark night of the soul, but the veil is so thin, and we have this opportunity to experience and even to live in this fifth dimensional reality, which is that one mind Purusha consciousness, where we're reading each other's minds, where we're channeling, all that's right here waiting for us. So it's removing the obstacles to that alignment, right? I know that that's sort of abstract in a way, but it does come down to embodiment. For me, it comes down to the simple things: taking care of your health, cleaning out your diet, refining the vessel, also to attuning the body, right? So this is a vibrational shift of consciousness. There's different levels. As I mentioned, there's the planetary level. We're doing this sort of demolition, right? But we are energetically raising our consciousness, which happens through vibration and creating coherence. So sound, music, I think you mentioned, or maybe we didn't talk about it yet, but I have a degree in expressive arts and healing. So dance, music, and art therapy was a huge part of my awakening. I founded the Ecstatic dance community in Boulder and Denver in 2005 and 6. And I still integrate that into all of my practices out here, because that was my path to healing. Because I had so much intensity and stuff that I mentioned, right? It was very heavy. It was very heavy in my body. My mind understood it. I'd been to therapy for 6 years. I'd forgiven everybody. There was no problem there. But my body felt sort of weighed down in a way. Mm-hmm. And so any kind of bodily practice that connects mind, body, spirit. So obviously meditation or being in nature. But my favorite is ecstatic dance. Because we can transcend the mind. I mean, it's an ancient practice, a shamanic practice of attaining higher states of consciousness very easily, through vibration and drumming and that type of thing. So I would say to attend to the body, there's all this talk about ascending. Actually, what we're wanting to do is descend as well, bring the light down into our body, onto the planet, not leave. That's really not an option. That's actually a danger zone called spiritual bypassing, right? Yeah. We have to find that integration to be the transmission and the receptor. And community, come together, start working together to plant those seeds that will grow, and so we can see results. So, community gardening, or just more regular, potlucks or new moon ceremonies, tuning into things like this, expanding your mind. And, certainly there's the level of information right now. People have been saying we are in a third world war, and it's a war of information, And so that's a very important piece as well, to not get sucked into that dual experience of right versus wrong and dark versus light. We cannot ascend without this alchemical journey, which means we have to embrace the darkness that is not outside of us, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the mastery right there, to mm-hmm. see how dark it is, quote unquote dark, and to realize, oh, that's me too.
It sure is. Yeah, it's been challenging for many of us. I've personally gone through an awesome to 2020. It's awesome. It's been awesome because it's been so expansive. But there's so much growth, and embracing the dark. I've definitely been trying to embrace the darkness within myself, and it's challenging because part of growing up in the system of that we've been growing up in all this time has been, you want to be good, you want to try and be good. It's like always the good, so it's interesting trying to go, okay, like we have both, like, it's almost like one and the same. Like you can't have one without the other. And you need to embrace both, because without both, then there's only half of you, It's been a very interesting journey, but I've appreciated every moment. It's despite how hard or how easy it's been. tell us, let's go a little bit down another tangent. You are director, or one of the directors, at Lotus Bend Sanctuary, a beautiful spot in Austin, Texas, which when I think of Texas, because I've never actually been to Texas. So when I think of Texas, I'm thinking like red dirt, rocky mountain things, like I had no idea, obviously. I just watch TV. But yeah, it's this beautiful, beautiful space that you have. Tell us about that. What do you
Oh,
do there?
thank you. Yeah, I mean, wow. I'm so blessed and it's such an honor. I really consider myself a steward of this property. It's a portal place, and there's a lot of them on the planet, and we're needing more and more people to create them. It's we have almost 8 acres, and it's you know, we call it a sanctuary because we wanted to create a place that was sort of outside of time and space, meaning sort of like out of the city, out of the, the disease of our time, busyness, right?
Mm.
And the owner, Alfonso, is just an absolute genius alchemist with the plants and with nature, and works in really in harmony with her. And so it's just gorgeous with all of the landscape. And Russell, who's also, we all three work together, has done an incredible job masterminding the property with a lot of intention around as above, so below. So everything on the property is placed in a chakra line.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Cool.
we actually, I actually last night was dancing on the property and envisioning I'm going to start creating some actually embodied walking rituals for people to go through the chakras. So the Muladhara, the root chakra is going to be, which it's still in process, sort of an outside sacred yoga and meditation space with some sacred geometry, copper, attunement structure over it. And when we have a sweat lodge, which is the Svadhisthana, which is coming online, the sexual chakra. Then the sacral chakra is our main space, our temple space. The heart chakra is our fire. Then, the Agnya, the Vishuddha is a little bridge. We're doing wind chimes. And then the Agnya is a labyrinth, the mind going in and going out. And then the seventh chakra is going to be a sounding dome and chanting dome. And so we do, we rent the space, but then, I also offer my own work out there, ceremonial teaching, the dance ceremony and things of that nature. But people come onto the property and have their own direct experience of spirit. And that's really what it's about. That, we don't need dogma. We don't really need anything. All we need to do is open up and feel. And nature is such, the doorway in. And with, the specificity to the details that we bring, it really creates this portal experience. And I will say, quickly that it is a portal of the Dark Mother. We have Lotus Bend because of 2 massive floods that happened 2 years apart, both on Halloween, which a 500-year flood in 2013 destroyed the place.
Wow.
They rebuilt it. 2 years later, on Halloween, a 100-year flood destroyed it again. So
Wow.
it was rebuilt again. So Scorpio energy, Halloween, is the Dark Mother, which is all about that transmutation, process, the alchemy of the light and the dark. And we have a little area called the area for the mother. We had a Mother Mary statue out there.
Mm-hmm.
And she's about, say this tall, okay? And it's in honor of Alfonso's mother, Catherine, because he was given the money to purchase Lotus Bend when she passed like 20 years ago. She did not move in either flood. She's sitting outside on top of a rock, and there were 8 feet of water rushing over her, okay?
Wow.
And it's one of those miracles. I mean, it's definitely overseen. FEMA came in and said this is no longer inhabitable. It was supposed to be a retirement home for Alfonso. And so the vision came to make it a community space. And, the prayer is so strong that, it's been rebuilt twice. And it's definitely a space of listening and attuning to what she wants, right? Nature wants.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, and I live on the property. We have chickens, and since the pandemic, we've really started focusing on more of the sustainability. We're building a tiny home village, and we got a peacock last week.
Amazing.
And so we have Shiva, and we're attracting, you know, his counterpart Shakti, hopefully in the next month or so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when you say portal place, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, great question. Well, a portal is a space that takes you from where you are to somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when we talk about this ascension or this awakening of consciousness, people can come out there and more easily tap into these higher states of being, have magical experiences, have that feeling of oneness, right? You know, I hold space for a lot of different clients out here, and I've witnessed 2 or 3 come online with channeling out there, like literally open up to that one mind consciousness and start getting messages. And this has happened in an accelerated time process out here since this pandemic, right? Because that force of that thrust of that being thrown into the underworld also opens the gates of heaven. So people can come out there and have these experiences that are transformational, but in a very natural way, in a very non-contrived, non-dogmatic way. We may speak about the stars in astrology, but it's really just going back to the very simplistic way of connecting to the elements and celebrating through music and dance and vibration that raises our energy.
Beautiful. I've actually been do you know Laurie Ladd?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so she's a channeler. She's quite famous in that sort of scene.
Nice.
In that world. And she every year she does like a 4-hour webinar on like a how-to, because apparently, you know, we're all supposed to be able to channel.
Right.
Is that your understanding?
Yes. I mean, the return of Christ is the return to Christ consciousness. We all have that capacity because we are all one. We are all one same divinity in form. Will everybody get there in this life? Of course not. But this is absolutely possible. And that's something else I would say, you know, in reference to your last question about like how to manage what's going on. Go within. You'd be surprised, you know, people that haven't had much experience meditating, get some guided meditations and let someone guide you into these deeper states, because magic can happen really quickly.
Yeah.
Your spirit guides can come in, you can have visions, you can to open up to your own capacity to start, you know, living in that way and more connection. And so absolutely, I feel that. And there's different ways that people pick up information. You know, some people are just obviously going to have this really profound gift, you know, where they see images and they have, it's like very specific, right? They're sort of the way showers, but we all have the capacity on some level to expand our intuition, you know, and our connection to feeling. So it's sensitizing, it's opening up our senses, which is again why we need to declutter our embodiment, declutter our mind, not get caught in the story, unplug from the drama, because that's not who we are. On some level, all this show that's going on is an illusion, right? We had to have some kind of story. We had to create something. I mean, we weren't going to just wake up one day and think it's a good day to evolve, right? So the more that we can sort of choose to ascend and to orient our consciousness above, like the hawk and looking down, the more easily we're going to have access to the real life force, the real truth, the real messages, the real connection.
Yeah. I've it's interesting because I actually did the 4-hour webinar, the Laurie Ladd one, because I've been very drawn to all this stuff this year, for obvious reasons. And so I did the Reiki 1 with Tiana,
Awesome.
which was awesome. Yep. So I've been doing it every day since, and I love it. It's a beautiful practice. Like, it's great doing it to yourself, but I actually just had a friend come over and I practiced on her. On, you know, she was the first person I practiced on.
Nice.
And it actually felt like really beautiful and calming and peaceful. And it was just like, you know, if I was to recommend anything to anyone, it's like, learn how to do Reiki, because it's such a beautiful like channel opener
Yes.
for starters, and it just makes you feel really good, and you can't really go wrong. Like, you can't really do it wrong, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, you can do it to yourself, and also if you do it to other people, you're still getting the benefits of it as well, which is incredible. So and then the channeling, I was like, I'm just very attracted to all this stuff, and I just need to learn it all. And it's it's just been such an interesting year. But the thing that, like, with the channeling stuff is like, that doesn't come naturally to me at all. And I'm like, I feel like there's resistance there, and it's you know, there's like that doubt, you know. It's like, are they really here? I kind of know that they're here, but are they here? And why can't I hear you? And speak louder and be clearer. And it's
Trying to Capricorn your way through it, right?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
You
it's
know,
not working.
and it's part of the process, right?
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
I mean,
For
everybody goes through that to some degree. But I will say, in reference to, you know, your sun and Capricorn, there's one of the shadows is there's a tendency to be really hard on yourself.
sure.
And you know, want to do everything perfectly, right? And so that right there can get in the way.
Sure does.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where, again, like, knowing your archetypes in the spectrum of light and shadow can really help.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes time, and to be playful, you know, like go back to childlike mind, you know, beginner's mind.
Curiosity.
Yeah. Because, I mean, this is the programming that we're having to unwind, right? We are solid 3D, you know, humans on the planet, you know, all this stuff. It's like, it's a process of shedding or unveiling and sensitizing.
Yes, so true. It is such a process. Um, so twin flames. I've been hearing that a lot recently. Can you just a quick rundown on what a twin flame is?
Yes, I can, actually. So a twin flame is one soul that split in the beginning of incarnation into two, with the intention of going on individual journeys to ascend, to do the work, to explore, to refine, with the agreement, the higher agreement, to come back online, to come back into union on the planet, to be a guiding force, at a pioneer at this reunification and return to the divine androgyne. So, as I spoke about in the Aquarian age, it's about that coming online with the one consciousness, with the one mind. Mm-hmm. Twins are starting to emerge back into union as being sort of the way showers, because if we think about working with duality, right, we're thinking about, you know, we are moving towards a singularity. It starts first within, right? We're all working with our own inner parts, all our masculine, feminine, our light and dark. Well, the next level is to do that with another person, is to do that with one, you know, reunify with. And this can happen in all kinds of relationships. I mean, I think it's important to also note that every sign is broken into 3 sections. They're called decans. They're 10 degrees each. A sign is 30 degrees, okay? The first decan of Aquarius, therefore the first decan of the new age, is Libra. So that means for the first 700 years, this is a predominant focus for us. Libra is the sacred mirror. It's the Hieros Gamos. It's the sacred marriage. It's the understanding of working with the two to bring into one. So twin flames are sort of the refined, like I mentioned, sort of way showers to help to pierce the veil. And when they do come back online, that alchemical syzygy becomes a portal for higher consciousness, like a tortal field to pour through and to raise the vibration. It magnifies the capacity, because of the two coming back into the one, to accelerate this awakening on the planet. So they come, it's not about the relationship, it's about the energetic acceleration that can happen through the two. However, the relationship and the dynamic comes online to do, sorry about that, I've just had a bunch of things open on my screen.
That's okay.
I don't know if you can see that. I have to close all these really quick. Okay, done. To be basically in service to this ascension process, to be in service to this awakening on the planet.
So is there only one twin to each person?
Yes, because it's
Right.
one soul, but there's families, there's soul families, you know, that we come back together with, but you only have one twin flame. Okay. And not everybody, and this is actually controversial, some say that not everybody has one, and I don't know the answer to that. I'm not clear about that, but not everybody, and most people won't meet them in this life. And it's a very challenging dynamic, because if you think about it, you're portals for the collective polarity. So that energy is pouring through the two. And so if that can come back, so if enough, we can just imagine for a moment, take the personal story out of it. If enough people come back online in this way, in these twins, right, then it starts to conglomerate the energy back into the union of all. So yeah, that's why we're starting to see more and more of that come into the zeitgeist, this awareness around the twin flame dynamic.
And how do you know that you found your twin flame?
The $1 million question.
Have you got the answer for me, Shannon?
It is quite a journey, I will say that. And it's sort of like, how do you know that there is God? Can you define that? Can you ever prove that? It's a knowing.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And it's a journey. There's a lot of doubt. There's false twin flames. Because the dynamic tends to be quite volatile in the beginning. And that's part of the alchemy, right? That's the descent, right? Because when the twins come back into union, wow, it's like electricity and, you know, vibration from the entire existence coming through to try to unearth and allow the energy to flow through, like I said, like a tortal field. And so if there are any obstructions to that flow, it will destroy them. So it destroys the ego. It destroys your sense of knowing in a lot of ways, because no matter how enlightened we are, we all have dark spots or blind spots. So there's definitely a very unique dynamic that takes place within that journey.
I guess it's a matter of trying and finding out, living and learning, right? Just going through it.
Yeah, I mean, right? You don't have a choice. But they say that once you have come into alignment with your twin, there is no separating. You may choose to not come into union, but they're always a part of your consciousness, you know? And most twins don't end up together because the path is so treacherous, and most people aren't willing to do that level of self-accountability and self-work. Yeah. And it's very, very complex and multidimensional. And so people may choose a soulmate union instead, which tends to be more calm.
Oh, so soulmates are different.
Yeah, soulmates are different. Soulmates are just, you have contracts with people from past lives that you're working through.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and karma mates, you have karma to clean up with people. There's different levels of relationship.
Okay, cool. I could literally talk to you for hours because this is all fascinating, but I am aware of the time, and
Yeah.
I don't want to, take up much more of your precious time. Shannon, how can people contact you if they're interested in, um, what do you provide readings or
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
that sort of stuff?
Thank you. Yeah, I always start with a reading, of course, to get the map. And then I work with people ongoingly. I really feel like I don't know, sort of a midwife to the new age. So it looks like, an astrologically based counseling, coaching, but, I also work with dreams and certain things too as well. So really assisting the soul's awakening and evolution. And my email address is shiftshannon@gmail.com. So shift as in the Shift Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And my website is shannonleegill.com, and it's LEI. So that's the two ways, probably best ways. And I have a Facebook page, Shannon Gill Astrology, and certainly you can be my personal friend as well, which is just Shannon Gill.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it, and I'm sure our listeners do too. I hope you have an amazing rest of the day in Texas.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. This has been an honor and so nice to meet you. And I know it's past your bedtime, right?
It is past my bedtime, but that's cool. Like I'm very awake because of the stuff that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Me, so.
Well, thank you for supporting my work, and stay in touch with me.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll do. Thanks,
and
Shannon.
You can check in next year. Yeah, blessings.
Yes, for sure. Too.
Bye.
Bye.